Hello and welcome to our Veterans Voices special. I'm Josh Benson, and each Veterans Day we give thanks to those Americans who step forward, often with great sacrifice, to serve in our military in times of war and peace. We honor them for their roles in historic battles and for their day-to-day service around the world. Well, tonight, some stories about these extraordinary men and women. The Great War, World War I, claimed more than 16 million lives, and just over 100,000 were Americans since the U.S. entered the conflict 3 years after it started. Now, the country's official World War I museum in Kansas City, where, as John Holt reports, today's veterans are the stewards of the artifacts.
It's been showcased internationally in recent years, like Royals World Series celebrations or Chiefs Super Bowl parades. And most recently, the 2023 NFL Draft. More than 54 million fans saw this landmark on TV. But the National World War I Museum and Memorial in Kansas City is more than just a beautiful landmark. It started as the Liberty Memorial, breaking ground in 1921, officially opening its doors in 1926. Founded by Kansas City residents, which is critical to its history.
The people of Kansas City wanted it here and raised the money to put it here, and we did it on our own without any help, and that's important.
Today, the daily operations are mostly run by volunteers. Last year, more than 530 volunteers contributed more than 57,000 hours of their time. What's even more amazing, many of them have served our country just like Army veteran Paul Frank.
I served from 1969 to 72. I was a first lieutenant.
They come from all different conflicts and walks of life. Army veteran Kevin Wharton.
I started out with the Gulf War, and I did Gulf War, Korea, Bosnia, Korea, and then Iraq twice.
And retired Navy Lieutenant Commander Gary Jackson.
Desert Shield, Desert Storm. I was off the coast of Somalia a few times and in Afghanistan.
Army veteran Charlie Van Way served during Vietnam on the medical side. He still practices medicine part-time on top of his volunteer work.
I'm also a guide at the museum. I run a lecture series for the volunteers.
The stories told here also have a part in his family's history.
My father went to West Point just after the war, class of 1924, so he started West Point in 1920. My uncle Charlie, Charles Craig, actually served over there.
Army Lieutenant Colonel Nikki Dean retired from Fort Leavenworth this past January.
Prior to that, I've had numerous deployments from Germany to Korea, and I have been on a few occasions to both Iraq and Afghanistan.
Now she's getting her master's degree in museum studies while interning at the museum and memorial's offices.
While I was preparing to transition and retire from the U.S. Army, to do so at the National World War I Museum and Memorial is an incredibly wonderful opportunity that I was afforded by the leadership here.
Even though the veterans of World War I are long gone, these veterans work to keep their legacy alive. A place to honor and remember the First World War, where today's veterans are carrying on the legacy of those before them, all right here in Kansas City.
That was John Holt reporting. Now, some veterans survive service without a scratch. Others leave with deep scars on the outside and the inside. Yet a service animal can make all the difference in recovery. Ryan Dean reports from Syracuse, New York.
Yes. Second breakfast. Amazing.
Ryan Woodruff is in a really sweet spot right now. He has a beautiful family and a good buddy named Chase.
Down.
He's in a good spot.
And this is right after boot camp right here.
Because of overcoming the tough spots.
I knew I'd be going to Iraq very shortly after.
And there were many in his 4 years as a Marine.
We were being hit with over 30 IEDs a month. So that's average every day. This was actually a vehicle-borne improvised explosive device that went off on.
He would see 2 tours in Iraq.
You're just in this continuous state of managing high levels of stress all the time, kind of not knowing what's coming next.
What came next was a hard transition. Like many veterans, Woodruff found life after duty a hard battle.
You get out and it's expected that you just go to college, get a job, fit in with society.
For years, the fit wasn't right. 7 years after leaving the Marines, his path became clear.
2016 is when I found Clear Path. And this is a dog that I was placed with as part of the program at the time. And this was, for me, the start of a next chapter.
Woodruff went from having a service dog to now leading the Clear Path Canine program. It's become nationally recognized.
We are one of a kind.
Dogs such as Chase and Nico are raised right from the start.
Nico, come here. Rest.
A rigorous 2-year program working on skills to help veterans manage PTSD symptoms. Woodruff, who no longer needs a service dog of his own, has been a game changer for the program.
Look at me, Granger, look what I got.
And Granger has been life-changing for Mike Todd.
We are best friends, aren't we, Granger?
That friendship pulled Todd out of a dark period. He spent 26 months in Vietnam.
This is a personal friend of mine that I lost in Vietnam.
And would go more than 30 years without any symptoms of PTSD. But once he retired, he lost routine, and the scenes of Vietnam became vivid.
Like it was this morning. You know, you can smell it, you can feel it, you can see it.
He got to the point he didn't want to leave the house. Letting Granger in
Dress?
Got him out.
Okay. Inseparable, for sure. I just can't go anywhere. I don't even want to go anywhere without him. You know, he's such a help to me.
As for Woodruff, he's no longer wandering. Helping the lives of other vets has led him to a path of purpose.
Well, a man who proudly served his country in not one but 2 wars. Coming up, meet a decorated Navy veteran who had a lot of living to do and is here to tell you about it. Plus, the tanks that won the war. An up-close look at some of the 50,000 Sherman tanks and the World War II soldiers who manned them. Well, after just 21 years of peace, the world was once again embroiled in war. America's mighty Sherman tanks were key to an Allied victory in all combat theaters. On Long Island, New York, a tribute to the tanks and the soldiers who used them. Kala Rema reports.
Where? It's the sound of these M4 Sherman tanks at the Museum of American Armor that takes these 2 veterans back 80 years.
For an 18-year-old kid who didn't know anything, it was traumatic. We lived in a tank, 5 guys all the time, and food was terrible.
Cannoneer Jim Andreas is 96 years young, recalling the days he loaded shells into these Sherman tanks, the main battle tank of the United States military during World War II.
Seeing this tank behind you, what does it make you think of?
I'm glad I'm home. A lot of people didn't make it, and that was sad. Excuse me, I was one of the lucky ones. The young people to know how bad it was, and it should not happen again.
This is Commander Julius Fiorini. At 99 years old, he's a man of few words.
Finally came, I got the best of everything. I don't know how long it'll last. God's going to take me soon.
Both of these World War II veterans wear their hats daily as a source of pride. They tell me they hope their legacy lives through history taught in school, and their time fighting for freedom is not lost on the younger generation.
I wear my hat now, and people shopping, they thank me. And I really appreciate it because it shows they remember World War II. I get upset when I talk to people who have no idea World War II, who Patton was or any of the generals.
And it's not just on Veterans Day. A thank you for your service goes a long way every day.
Well, from war on land to war at sea, the Battle of Iwo Jima in February of 1945 was among the bloodiest of conflicts in the Pacific. And one man who was there is alive to talk about it, but his military service hardly ended with this war. Phil Blauer brings us his story.
I was born in Detroit, Michigan. At 6 years old, I got sick. They told my mother I'm not going to live, and I'm still here.
Many years later, Juan Montano is now 98. The medals on his Navy uniform are witness of a full and heroic life.
And these are my ribbons All the ribbons I got.
Juan was only 17 when he enlisted in the Navy in 1943, ready to fight in World War II in the Pacific Ocean.
Well, I was in many battles, 9 of them, 10 of them. Iwo Jima was one of the worst. I was a bull coxswain. They put a Jeep in my boat and 18 Marines.
Looking through our glasses now, we're just a couple of 100 yards off the beach. We can see these Amtraks pull up along the beach and dozens of Marines around each one of them.
Under enemy fire, he showed incredible courage, refusing to give up when higher-ups already had.
I want to tell you what happened. There was machine gun fire hitting us. We got an officer that's supposed to take command. He was so scared, he must have been new and never been in battle. He was behind me in case he was letting the bullet hit me, and then he got down real low. I took command of the whole thing. There was a whole bunch of boats there, and we went in, and I gave them the signals when to go and everything.
After many battles, Juan Montaño came back to the United States in 1946. He started a family and went on pursuing his passions, one of them in Mexico, as a charro, a cowboy.
And that's me jumping through a loop on a horse.
Juan also fought in Korea and went on dangerous missions in Antarctica before retiring from the military in 1963. Despite the years, he still shows his Navy pride at military reunions.
All the reunions are very important to me. My favorite part of the day, they're running into these fellas that I know, and the ones that I don't know, we're all brothers. Like, we went through it, I feel like they're family.
And with his military family, Juan is finally able to open up about what they all went through, combat, danger, and the horrors of the war.
I couldn't talk about it before. I'd break down crying, and they didn't want to see that. Within the last couple of years, I could talk, but I never talked about it.
For Veterans Voices, I'm Phil Blauer.
Well, the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower, the USS Harry Truman, and many others. Warships are often named for generals and presidents. Next, we're going to tell you about a new ship dedicated in Tampa and the hero who it is named for. Also, more than 80,000 Americans who went to war and never came home. Some were missing, others held captive for years. Coming up, a new museum honoring prisoners of war. Welcome back. A mighty warship sailed into Tampa Bay recently to claim a new name, and an impressive name it is. The guided missile destroyer USS Jack H. Lucas was commissioned in Tampa. This ship is named for PFC Jack Lucas. At just 14 years old, he lied about his age to enlist in the Marine Corps during World War II. Harry Truman awarded Lucas the Medal of Honor for saving fellow Marines from an exploding grenade on Iwo Jima. To Lucas's family, the ship is a perfect tribute.
Seeing it in motion for the first time, yeah, it brings it all together in your head. You know, this is for real, and this is a legacy. It really is something to be proud of.
It means everything to us. It's a culmination of everything he stood for. He was determined to get to war. He was determined to do things Jack Lucas's way, and it's very fitting that a destroyer was named after him.
Yeah, usually they're named after. The home port for the USS Jack H. Lucas will be in San Diego. Well, this year marked 50 years since Americans held captive during the Vietnam War were released. Zara Barker shows us how a new exhibit is honoring dozens of these prisoners of war.
When you open the door to this exhibit, you're greeted by an image of some of the 591 prisoners of war leaving Vietnam, finally on their way home to their families after being in captivity for up to 8 years.
They were and still are the longest held group of POWs in our nation's history.
The exhibit, Open Doors, Vietnam POWs, 50 Years of Freedom, celebrates the lives of 30 former Vietnam prisoners of war.
We tried to capture them, their humanity, their personalities, and their life perspective.
It publicly celebrates these men, their families, their kids. It honors the sacrifices that they made, not by choice, but by force.
Captain Jack Ench is one of the 30 veterans that Jamie Halloran photographed and Taylor Keelan profiled.
Very flattered and very honored to be in this group with a bunch of these other real heroes. I don't consider myself a hero, but I served with a lot of heroes.
Captain Ench was shot down in Vietnam and held captive for 7 months. Still, he calls himself lucky.
I went through my own little crucible of hell. There, the first few days I was captured, I came back a little short-handed, as you see. They kept the thumb. It was injured in the explosion of the missile, and then they used that against me for 3.5, 4 days. Would not give me medical attention until I finally started answering questions.
This exhibit from this best friend duo was first displayed in 2002 at this same location. Then it traveled to 21 other venues, and for the first time in 20 years, it's back in Coronado.
When we were able to bring it back here, and I walked in and saw them being unpacked out of the boxes, I cried.
The moving photos, stories of survival, and relics from captivity.
These are original pieces that hung in the cell, but these are the rules in Vietnamese and in English of what they had to follow as POWs.
Now on display for the public for the first time in 15 years.
I just hope that this exhibit shows the value in our military and reminds people of the sacrifice that our military makes to protect our homeland.
For Veterans Voices, I'm Zara Barker.
Adjusting to life after military service can be a real struggle for many veterans, but there is help out there. A place with a gentle approach to overcoming post-traumatic stress is working for many vets. We're going to take you there next. PTSD impacts thousands of Florida veterans, and the numbers are growing. Tonight, 8 on Your Side's Walt Buteau takes us to a Florida retreat that has a unique approach to helping vets overcome their struggles and begin that healing process.
Veterans come here to Melrose, Florida to heal wounds you don't see.
And they get to dark places sometimes.
Some served as far back as Vietnam, half a century ago, when they were not always welcomed home.
These boys committed their life to their country, and to come home and get spit on, heart-wrenching.
Welcome to Soldiers Freedom Outdoors, where life's as simple as a horseback ride and wetting a hook on this pond. No louder than a rooster's wake-up call or a day in the blacksmith shop.
It's the opposite of war. Absolutely, 100%.
Jason Busey is a Soldiers Freedom board member. He was a tough-as-nails Marine who lost friends, faced death, but made it home only to face new struggles.
And some of these are sometimes it's life-changing, right?
The camp changed his life, reluctantly.
I don't need your doggone retreat, I don't need it.
He tells me the free-of-charge, non-profit camp showed him what it's taught hundreds of others battling PTSD.
It's not something that can't be fixed. You just need to learn what the triggers are and cope with it.
And he says veterans are more likely to share their problems with other veterans, whose stories can be jaw-dropping.
He had his weapon in his hand, and he was going to take his own life. Then his little boy came in the room, knocked on the door, and said, "Dad, you were going to take me to the zoo today."
Army Ranger John Jackson put down the gun and took his son to the zoo. Then took himself here, where he discovered motivation to open his own retreat in Georgia.
It made him such an open individual to his own plight that he knows that he can help others.
Results are difficult to imagine at the start of the 4-day camp.
And they stand just like this, and nobody talks, nobody says anything.
But by the end, the barriers are broken and bonds are made. Busey and the other volunteers who keep Soldiers Freedom humming say veterans leave knowing they built a core of friends who will help.
If we're saving lives, because this place is changing lives, somebody's in crisis, everybody knows, hey, look, that guy needs help, and we're going to help him.
For Veterans Voices, I'm Walt Buteau.
And we'll be right back. And thanks for joining us for Veterans Voices. To all our veterans, friends, and families, thank you for your sacrifices. Good night and best wishes.